Hello, hello. Gabrielle here from mypizzatoppings.com. Today I'm going to make some vegetable soup. It's not vegetarian. I usually use chicken stock, but feel free to use veggie stock if you want to. I've got here some zucchinis, both yellow and green, some carrots, and I'm going to chop up some fennel as well. And then I have onions here on this other cutting board. I usually use a plastic cutting board for onions because they tend to smell. So if you use a wooden cutting board for onions, sometimes the cutting board will begin to smell like onion. So I'm going to start by just some oil in this pot back here. Olive oil. I almost always use olive oil. I rarely use other types of oil. I just prefer olive oil. So I'm just heating up some oil in here. I'm going to start by putting in the onions and the carrots. I just want to point out, I can hear that that's just a little bit too hot. So again, using my senses to figure out things about cooking. I'm putting the onions and the carrots in. I always put the onions in and get them a little bit translucent in the beginning. I don't really have a good reason for doing that, except for I think that it sort of builds the initial flavor of whatever I'm cooking. The carrots take a long time to cook, a long time to soften up because they are the hardest vegetable that I'm using. So that's why I put them in first. The zucchinis will soften up pretty quickly. In this particular, for vegetable soup, because you're gonna liquefy it and then basically let it stew for a long time, everything's gonna get soft anyway, so it really doesn't matter. But this is just my method. You could do it any way you want. Okay. And then the other thing I wanted to make sure I did was to show you how to deal with this fennel, because a lot of people don't know how to do fennel, and I don't want it to scare you. It comes like this. I've already used it, so it looks a little funky, but it will usually have two of these. Here are the fronds that come with it. So it usually looks like this. And making a mess here on the floor. I have to get rid of these because they're in my way. Changing my plan here. I'm going for the zucchinis too. Just because they're in my way. Okay, so now that I've got this fennel, I already have sliced it here, and I'm going to continue to do that. It's kind of has the consistency of celery, so it adds a good crunch. It's got a real sweet taste. When I start to get to the middle, where this part is, I will stop and go to the other side. When it comes out, it looks like this. It kind of looks like celery. It comes, it looks like that. And I'm going to chop it up into much smaller pieces because because it's like celery, it can be a little tough. But that's all I'm doing is, cutting it on the edge right here. Okay, so now that I have this, I'm going to chop them into much smaller pieces. Baste them up a little bit. Again, it's everything that's going into this, because it's a soup, is going to get pretty soft. So I'm not that worried about it, but this is one of the harder vegetables, so I'm just going to make it small. I don't want it to take up a lot of space in your mouth. And it's a pretty strong vegetable, so I'm not using all that much in comparison to the other vegetables. I put about one and a half zucchinis in, green zucchinis, summer zucchinis, and I put one yellow squash in, one onion, and 3 carrots. So that's about the proportions that I'm using, and then I'm putting in a handful of the fennel. Okay, so once I get that in there, I'm just going to stir it up. There's not too many more ingredients that go in here. So I'm just going to let that cook down a little bit. The only other ingredients that I'm going to put in are, besides spices, are tomatoes, and I'm just using some diced canned tomatoes, and garlic probably at the end, towards the end, but and chicken broth. So, and again, you can use veggie stock. It doesn't make any difference. I think that chicken stock is good. I like chicken stock, so that's what I'm using. But you can definitely, if you want to make it vegetarian, just use veggie stock. So that's all you need to do. And I do enough liquid to just make it the consistency that I want to. So I just keep putting stuff in until it looks like I want it to look. Some people like it, you know, more chunky and less liquidy. That's totally up to you. The other thing you can do is make it more tomato based. So sometimes I use, instead of a small can like this, I use a big can, and it becomes much more tomatoey. Okay, so once the vegetables in the soup, once the onions have become sort of clear, not everything's going to be all soft yet, but once the onions are clear, that's when I put the liquid in. So the onions are clear. I'm going to put in this can of diced up tomatoes and some stock. That's probably about 3 cups. This is 6 total, I think. 48 ounces, 6 cups. And then this was probably about half full. So 3 cups. 3 cups of stock. And then I'm just going to mix that together and let it go. I'm not going to put spices in this right now. I'm going to wait until closer to when they're finished. So I'll come back and show you what I put in there for spices. I don't know what I'm going to put in there for spices. I'm going to let the fennel and the vegetables pick up some of the flavor, make the flavor of the soup, and then I'll decide what I want to put in there to spice it up or salt it up. I haven't put any salt in there or anything like that. I've put nothing in except for vegetables and stock right now, and tomatoes. Okay? Okay, so the vegetable soup has been cooking for about a half an hour now, and everything's pretty soft in there. I'm just going to put in one more ingredient. I have a bunch of kale left over. I'm going to use it. Kale, man, kale lasts forever, and it's apparently really great for you. It's very helpful. It has a lot of vitamins. So I'm just going to throw some kale in there. It cooks real fast, so it's fine that I'm putting it at the end. And it also has a kind of a strong flavor, which is one of the reasons why I put it in at the end. If it soaks in there, a lot of that flavor is going to go in there. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but I find it to be a strong vegetable, so I like to put it in at the end. The last thing I'm going to do is put in some spice, and I'm not going to do a lot with this, but I'm going to put in, I'm going to taste before I put in salt, but I'm probably going to put in some salt, and I'm definitely going to put in some, I decided on dill. I had both dill and oregano that I got at the health food store recently. They're pretty fresh and smell really good. I'm going for just the dill this time. I'm not going to put in the oregano with the dill. They both smell good, but I'm not sure what they would do together. And the dill smells so good. I think I just want to stick with sort of the single flavor rather than messing with it, but it's fine to mess with it too. So I'm just going to put in a little bit of dill. maybe 2, that's probably about 2 tablespoons of dill. And mix it all up with the kale in there. Like I said, the kale cooks really quickly. All right, I'm going to show you what that looks like. So here's what we've got. You can see how much liquid's in there. This is a pretty chunky soup. I may put some more liquid in there. I'm gonna let this stew on the stove for quite a while longer still, so but I might put some more liquid. It looks pretty chunky to me, which is not a bad thing, but it's maybe a little bit too chunky. So I think I'm gonna put some more liquid in there. And let me taste to see how we did with the spices. It's good, but it needs salt. And it needs pepper. So this is going to be last. I'm going to put a little bit of pepper in there. I don't think I'm going to cayenne this up. I usually do put cayenne in, but I'm not going to this time. Just because I can always put it in after. So if I'm not sure who's going to be eating this, then, and I want to leave it sort of up to the person who's eating it to put the cayenne in, I just don't put any in. So the last thing I want to say about this is this took me about maybe an hour to do. And it can be frozen or stored for probably about a week, and it gets better as it gets stored. So if you're busy and you have, you know, a lot of family members and you get home from a hard day at work and your kids are hungry and you're still dealing with homework and pets and, you know, cleaning and all that stuff, it can be a lot of work to try to do this after you've been at work all day. However, if you plan ahead and cook on a weekend or when you do have some time and make a big batch, I mean, it's a lot of soup. There's probably 8 actual servings of soup in there. That could be, you know, for a big family, 1 meal, but it could be, you know, a meal for over a couple days. It also freezes well, so you can use it for lunch. If you have a place to heat up a lunch, you can use it for lunch. So you can make food ahead of time and use it throughout the week, which can save you some time at the busier times in your week. So if you plan ahead, you can sort of eliminate the issue of time by doing that. So I recommend freezing this. I frequently freeze soup and I shove it in the freezer and then I pull it out for lunches. And I also, it makes a great, it's probably not the only thing you're gonna eat, but this along with a quesadilla or a grilled cheese sandwich makes a perfect meal or a perfect lunch. So, or any kind of sandwich with this soup makes a perfect kind of lunch, and you're using a lot of fresh vegetables. It's really good for you, and you've basically cooked it from scratch. So enjoy it, have fun with it, and remember about the cooking ahead and the meal planning. I think that's really an important aspect of cooking that a lot of people get hung up on because they're short on time and they don't know how to cook. Then they just say, oh, I'm not going to be able to do this in an hour or whatever because they don't know how to do it. But once you get the hang of it, and if you plan ahead a little bit, you can really be eating some good food when you normally might be eating at McDonald's. So I recommend this. It's easy. All I did was put all the soup ingredients in there and let it stew on the stove for a little while, pretty much. So it's easy. It's fairly quick. An hour and 15 minutes isn't that big of a deal. Especially if you make it ahead. If you don't have an hour and 15 minutes after work, that's fine. You can just make it ahead. So enjoy it and look for other things on www.mypizzatoppings.com. Thanks.